Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, Magic is Real listeners. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I have with me someone that I am so enthusiastic about having on the show because he's one of the most interesting people that I've heard of, and we have a lot of interests in common. This, everybody, is Gary Wimmer. Welcome, Gary.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be with you, my dear.
Likewise, I'm enthusiastic specifically about Gary because he is a renowned psychic. Do you call yourself a psychic medium, or do you call yourself just a psychic? I've heard you referred to as both.
I call myself a psychic, but you could, some people think of me as a, healer, a life coach, whatever. These are all words to describe different things people do and how they do it.
Yep.
So probably a little bit of a broad definition.
Everything.
Basically, I have a certain niche that I've developed of doing readings and so forth. So that's kind of my main niche.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear about that. You are also an accomplished musician, an author, an actor. You do all the creative things, and I love that about you. And I also, you had a near-death experience. So what I'd like to do is I want to know all about you. I want to know who you are and where you come from and what your spiritual beliefs may have been when you were a child. How did you evolve into this world? It'll be followed up by my question, did the psychic stuff come first or did the near-death experience come first? So you can tell it any way that you like, share whatever you feel called to.
Okay, well, I'm the third of 7 sons. I had 2 older brothers, exactly a year apart, a double and a triple Sagittarius, 45, 46, 1947. Here I come, highly sensitive Scorpio, and 4 younger brothers. Raised Catholic. I learned the whole Mass in Latin by the time I was 12 years old. In the middle of about the time puberty hit, I began to really question the Catholic Church because they had a rather antiquated view of human sexuality, to say the least,
Yeah.
And by the time I got to college, I was asking a lot of questions because I couldn't believe some of the fixed thinking that organized religion had fallen into. And if I see something broken, like the way the Catholic Church looked at sexuality, I think most boys go through this when you go through puberty, because the guilt complex.
Yeah.
I ain't going to hang around till they fix it. I'm going to go find what fixed me,
Exactly.
Bye-bye. So I left the church. I had no problem with God or Jesus and spiritual concepts. I went to college, 65 to 70, graduated, electrical engineer. I started playing music way back in the 60s, before the Beatles came out. Chuck Berry, Beach Boys, Ray Charles, soul, pop, all the, and of course, Beatles and Stones. I followed all that. And I played in bands from the time I was about 15, all the way through high school, all the way through college. And wasn't planning on being a professional musician. But in college in the late 60s, I started studying spirituality, reading a lot of Edgar Cayce. And a couple of people did a chart for me and said, you got a lot of natural psychic ability, So I moved to Austin in 1970. I worked 2 years as a conscientious objector because I wanted nothing to do with Vietnam. I was electrical engineer. I could have worked for the defense industry and received a deferment, but I didn't want to work the defense industry. I was so furious about Vietnam and so forth, and that was happening then. And I'd converted to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. To hell with this stuff,
Yeah.
That's where I'm going. That's where the fun was. That's where life was. That was happening. Moved to here in 1970 in Austin, worked as a conscientious objector, started traveling in bands and working, and started giving readings with a regular deck of playing cards, probably more than anything. But of course, there wasn't an internet, so it was friends, people I met on the road, things like that. In 1977, I was fascinated with psychic ability from the time I started getting into it and reading about Edgar Cayce and realizing this makes sense. What
Yeah.
Edgar Cayce said about reincarnation and mind and creativity, and there was no hardcore dogma. There's like, you get to find your moral fiber and or not. It's
Right.
choice. Freedom of choice, free will. So I in the late 70s, I was touring and got off the road, and this was January 1977. And that day I had a lot of strange premonitions. Something was happening. Something felt different. I was quitting the band. Wasn't sure how to deal with a broken relationship when you're traveling all the time. It's kind of hard to hold together a relationship. I didn't know if I wanted to pursue this particular band anymore or not. So I was going through a lot of changes. I quit the band. And that night, my roommate and some friends were there, and we talked about my last week on the road. And then I started hearing what people were thinking before they would say it several times. It kind of shocked me. I went to bed that night, tried to sleep, couldn't sleep, up all night thinking. My mind was racing through everything in my life like never before. The next morning, my roommate comes walking in with a paper, and I saw the headlines through his eyes. There was some article on Jimmy Carter. I was just, wow. He threw it down on the table, and I was just staring at it, just shocked. You okay? Oh, yeah. This started building up. My roommates went to work. I started walking down the store. I could feel everybody's thoughts. I had just moved into this apartment, this duplex, and as I rearranged my stuff and put my clutter around, I could feel when I felt a particular object, who gave it to me, when. I thought they were behind me in the same room. Woo, life started changing. That night, my roommate and I went out to a club, Soap Creek Saloon here in Austin. As I walked in, I felt this strange sense of something at a particular spot right outside the door. Of course, everything was getting kind of strange, so I just put it in context. Went inside, listened to the band, too loud for me. I'm picking up thoughts of everybody. So I went and sat in the bar, quieter. Thought maybe I need to go take a break, walk outside. And all of a sudden, I'm standing outside in that same spot, and I see these people walk through me. Boy, it shocked me. I opened up my eyes. No, I'm right here on the stool. And then the door opened, and they walked through dressed exactly as I'd seen them a millisecond earlier. So I practiced that for a couple of times, and to my absolute surprise, I could see people walking in the club before they, go through the door. And I'm sitting in the bar. Boy, I never had that experience before, but it was fascinating. My roommate comes in, and I did it for him a time or two and made him bet $5, and he was going, wow, what the hell's going on? This built up over the next couple of days. I started having, everywhere I looked, I could feel signs. I was thinking at a different level. It wasn't normal life anymore. It was up to the millisecond awareness of every thought I had, of people. I could look at a random stranger 2 blocks away and think, scratch your head and point to that billboard sign, and they would do it. And I would go, now, did I know that was going to happen? Or did I
Or did I
make that
make it
happen?
happen?
If I made that happen, what if I thought car wreck? So the intensity of the thoughts, and it wasn't a solvable dilemma. Did I make that happen? Did I witness it or create it? That line between creator and witness got so thin. And I had to occupy my mind and my time because I was overwhelmed by this psychic ability, and I couldn't ignore it. And I didn't know what normal life was like by the 3rd and 4th day completely. I'll give you another example of what I was going through. My roommate and I, we went out to eat several times. He's aware that I'm getting real weird and trying to help, but I couldn't really explain it. I mean, how do you explain when every millisecond you're getting more information out of the clear blue? So we sat in a restaurant one time, and they're playing pool behind me. And I turned around and looked at it for a second, and I saw the next 5 or 6 shots. Well, he asked me, he said, how you feeling? What's going on now? I said, easier for me to show you than tell you. So I turned around, these guys playing pool. I turned around to him and said, he's going to shoot the 5 ball, the 6 ball. He's going to miscue. The waitress is going to bring him more drink. He's going to tip her $5. And he said, we both turned around and we watched it. And when it happened in real life, exactly as I'd call it, I realized, wow, I had seen it exactly as it unfolded just 5 seconds earlier. That was happening to me all the time. One time we were in a restaurant and he was again concerned, and I pointed over the corner of the restaurant to 2 ladies sitting as far away as we could. And I said, do you know either of them? And he goes, I don't think so. And I said, well, the lady facing away from me, the brunette, I'm going to have her write me a letter. And he said, well, what? I said, doesn't matter. She's going to have her write me a letter. I thought very harmless because, again, I couldn't turn this off. There was no neutral. I was either picking up stuff from the external world, unsolicited or not, or I was having to activate or do something because there wasn't a neutral. I couldn't turn it off and go back to just strumming my guitar and finding another gig. That was not. So anyway, I pointed these 2 ladies and said, I'm going to have the lady write me a letter. And we're starting to eat. He forgot all about this, of course. And during our meal, I kept thinking about that woman. I didn't walk by there, didn't anything. I kind of drew a laser beam over to me, the guy in the blue shirt over here, write me a letter. Total nonsense, but harmless. And later, as they left, they walked right by. The brunette was the second lady, and I just looked up as she walked by, and she threw a napkin down on the table, and on it, in big bold letters, she had written, "Why are you doing this to me?" That freaked me out. It freaked my friend out. I was too shocked to go up and say, did you pick up, I was aware that better be careful what I think. Better be real aware of everything going on. And that with did I cause that or affect that? The intensity built up to the point I have never been so scared in my life. At the same time, I never felt so enlightened, so powered. But either way, no matter which way that tightrope I was leaning at that particular second, fear or ecstasy, that's all that was happening is that tightrope. Normal life was not there anymore, completely gone. I couldn't sleep. Well, after about 7, 8 days, I kept feeling these monitors. They called themselves the monitors, or I named them that, like guardian angels. Something was watching me. Something knew what was going on. And I could feel them. I never saw them, but I could feel them at different times. And that gave me some reassurance. Then about the end of a week, it had built up to such a point that I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't know why this was happening. I didn't know what was happening. I know it wasn't normal. I didn't know if there was a button on my head I could push. It never occurred to me to go to a psychiatric hospital or take a downer. You're asleep for 2 days. In fact, my roommates were trying to get me some kind of downer, slip it into my drink. But my perception was so intense at times, I thought, well, if I go to sleep and I collapse, maybe it's my time to hold the candle for all consciousness. And if I go sleep on the job, maybe the whole world will evaporate, implode into a little big black hole, and it's my fault. That sort of fear on one hand, responsibility, and then other times, a couple times I felt like, man, I am Jesus Christ back on this planet. As a musician, who would ever expect that? And every time I had one of those thoughts, I went, no, I can't handle it. I can't even walk down the street without picking up everything. So I vacillated between these 2 extremes. And finally on February 7th, couldn't take it anymore. I'm charging down Guadalupe Street, pacing pretty fast, starting to cry, starting to pray. The fear, the doubt, the confusion had just overtaken me completely. And some people on the street were watching me. I'm praying, please, I can't take it. And all of a sudden, I felt this warm light hit me. And I felt my fear instantly disappear. Or, wow, I looked up and there's this huge light shining down on me. And I glanced around at all these people because they're kind of a circle around me. They were concerned about this guy. They didn't know whether to jump in and help or stay out of his way, you know. But excuse me. I looked up, I saw that light, looked at them. None of them even acknowledged it. They're still staring at me, the desperate guy in the middle of the sidewalk, praying and crying. I didn't care. I looked back up at that light, and then I realized it was like a crystal table, and it was about that thick. Not that thick, not that thick, a specific thickness, crystal clear. And above it were these 7 white-robed beings. And this light was coming down through their hands, actually, their palms that were all rested on this glass crystal table. And as I saw that, I felt this fear just disappear. And then I realized, you're the monitors, and they said, yes. They said, do you trust us? In one big, warm, super empowering, super voice. And I said, well, of course, but I don't start asking about what's going on. And then, shh, do you trust us? They asked me that a time or two. And I was frantic, but no longer afraid, just mystified. Long story short, within a second or two, I was hit head on by a speeding car. I was outside my body. I watched my body get tumbled over by the car. And it was kind of humorous. I looked back like, okay, that's what happens on Earth. You know, even if that is my body, it's kind of, wow, it's getting banged up pretty well, you know, or whatever. A sense of detachment, which is and the first thing I saw when I left, I started expanding outward like a balloon in all directions. I didn't leave my body like an arrow, one direction, all directions at once. And the first thing I confirmed this is I saw the whole Earth from 360 degrees, north, south pole, all the way around, because it was inside me as I was expanding. My psyche, my body's laying down on the concrete in Guadalupe Street. And people are screaming and drivers jumping out, frantic. What a circus. I'm gone. And within no time, I kept expanding and expanding. I started losing awareness of myself, but I started seeing like lights on towers of people that I was connected to. I started expanding through the planets, this galaxy, more galaxies. I got to the end of the universe, which felt like a thought rather than a massive big thing of time and space, just a thought, an infinite thought, a divine thought, who knows, but is it physically really here? And this is looking from the outside. And from that perspective, I felt like I was going through this level of consciousness that I called the colors, because that level seemed to give us when we come in, because I realized now this is how we go out. That's how we come in. We don't go out and come in like an arrow. Humans think that way, but the soul comes out, and when it comes in at birth, it takes an impression of all the planets, the stars, the whole galaxy, you know. Of course, never occurred to me. But now that I'm experiencing it, I'm going, ding, wow. So I kept expanding and feeling more and more of a sense of detachment. I didn't know if it was me anymore, didn't care. It was pure sensation. It was joy beyond description. I came out of this universe and saw infinite universes, and there's the one I came from, and wow, they're all everywhere. And then this sky of infinite universes seemed to kind of roll up into a tunnel of light. Very apt description. I felt that way. And I was propelled through it, kind of like a clown at a circus, I guess. But it was circling clouds of silver white light and such a good form feeling. No awareness of me, no awareness whatsoever, just pure sensation and beautiful. And I came out of that tunnel of light, and I ended up in this infinite sky blue. And it was the mind of God, infinite mind. And I was not there as an observer. I had returned to be part of it. And in this infinite mind, everything comes from this infinite mind, always has, always will. And if it didn't exist, nothing would exist. And it has no limitation and no bias. And it's got, you know, humans have bias, you know. It has no limitation because whatever could possibly limit it would be the boss. And then that's where I was at. It didn't matter. And the interesting thing is, and most people who've had NDEs agree with this, at the core of this infinite creativity was infinite love. Now, how infinite love manifests into infinite creativity, which manifests into infinite universes, of which we're in one of them. How that comes about from infinite love is certainly beyond the scope of physics or human comprehension, but I could see it then so crystal clear. There was no other option, because if it wasn't there, nothing would be here. And somewhere in this process, I felt like I had gone from being at one with this infinite mind to being an observer. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to be pulled back from it. Like, where are we going now? And I went back through this kind of tunnel of light and saw this universe. Still had no idea of me, but I saw this universe. For some reason, was drawn to it. I use the term in my book, spiritual gravity, because that's what it felt like. I was being pulled by spiritual gravity somewhere. I had no idea who I was, where I was going. Where I just was pretty nice. Didn't particularly want to leave, but I didn't get a choice. Spiritual gravity just pulled me. And then as I entered this universe, I started collapsing the same way I went out, toward this particular galaxy and toward the Milky Way and toward this solar system, and still had no idea who I was. But then I started seeing these flashcards. I got close to Earth, and I started seeing these flashcards of the next 100 years of humankind. And I didn't know what they were at the time, but they were challenging. Terrorism, war, economic turmoil, global warming. I didn't know that it was global warming, but I see the sea rises all over the planet. Big earth changes, economic challenges. And they were looking to me like fairly well destined to happen, because we have to see the flaws in all this stuff before we can fix them. Now, I still don't know it's me seeing these pictures, but I know what the pictures are. It's pretty obvious. They're terrorism. And I saw symbols that later I realized were 9/11. I'd seen that in that period. And in September 11th, I was playing on a cruise ship in Europe, and a Swedish guy said, "Hey, man, I think y'all been attacked by terrorism." I ran down, saw that second plane go through. These people around me in the blue uniforms, I had seen that 24 years earlier. That TV, that plane, those people. But at the time, I couldn't make any sense of it. About 2 years ago, I realized I'd seen COVID-19. It looked like the big earth was getting all covered in ink or oil. I've seen so much of this stuff, and I don't try to predict it. Hell, turn on TV, you'll see it every day.
Right.
We're going through the biggest world transformation ever. So after all these scary pictures, I saw these beautiful pictures of us taking over space, desalinating water and having peace, and the 1,000 years of peace with enlightened humankind can and will happen. How soon? How many people around to share it? That's all being worked out in the process. But there's no other way to go other than higher evolution of mankind, because we're not going to destroy ourselves completely. We may screw up a lot. Still don't know it's me. So I saw the tragic pictures, the tough challenges, and then I saw the other side of it. And then all of a sudden I started seeing these pictures of this guy playing music and a psychic. And I thought, wow, maybe I know this guy. And all of a sudden I see my body on the street. And I went, that's me. And there's this red-haired guy hanging over me, just screaming and shouting. Well, I jumped back into my body immediately. And boy, what a shock. I had just been to the super highest consciousness, and now I'm back, and only a second of Earth time has passed. And I felt like I was there for infinity, but here I am back in real time, in real life. And there's this red hair falling over my head, and this guy's shaking me and screaming and petrified. Well, I was confused, but I just been to heaven and back. Hell, I jumped to my feet. I didn't feel a thing. I wasn't hurt, no blood, no shock. Well, shock from the voyage there and back, but not from the car. That didn't even bother me. And these people who'd witnessed me saw me talking, screaming and crying and praying and shocked and talking to something that wasn't there. And then this car hit me. And as soon as people rush out to help, I jumped to my feet like it didn't even happen. Because to me, it was kind of just a break in the consciousness. Wow, maybe I could have stayed there, maybe I shouldn't have, but in either case, here I am, and it's eerie because people are screaming. I decided I'm just going to go home. I'm not hurt. Too much to do with. I don't understand all this. But a couple of people said, "No, man, you got ambulances and cops. I can hear the sirens." And so when the ambulance and the cop arrived on the scene, they're looking around for this blood spattered body, and there ain't one. And I'm up talking to people, and I said, "Hey, I'm the guy you're looking for." And everybody kind of points at me like, "Oh, he's the guy." So he asked me, they're asking me, said, "How are you even standing?" And I said, "Just like you, on my feet. I mean, these cars." I said, "It didn't even bother me. I didn't get hurt. Can I just go home?" "Well, no, you can't go home. We got to take you to the hospital." And then a cop started asking me what happened. Well, the car wreck was nothing. What happened is what I've been going through the last week, and I just got a voyage to infinite mind and back, and they didn't want to hear a damn word of that.
Yeah, they probably assumed you were schizophrenic.
Oh yeah, well that turned out to be what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They took me to the hospital. They couldn't keep me. I wasn't hurt. They sent a guy in who I knew his name. I'd seen a premonition about him. In fact, I'd seen a premonition about this whole episode before, but I couldn't put it together. I mean, there's so many flashes of future and past and me, and it was just like a zoo, panoramic zoo. I'm kind of proud of myself for not going completely crazy, but they were protecting me.
Yeah.
The monitors knew that I was going through this, and they explained it to me, which I'll say in a moment. But after this, after I was, they took me to the hospital, couldn't keep me. They put me in jail because they had to get an order of protective custody, put me in a psychiatric hospital. And you know what? I didn't give a damn. You can put me anywhere, man. I just been to heaven and back. Yeah, it's kind of eerie. I don't know what my normal life would be had I not taken this interesting detour, but I did. So finally, they took me to a psychiatric hospital. I spent a week there, and everybody liked me, and I was playing piano for people and singing, and they all called me Mr. Smiles. And at the end of 10 days, they take you before a board of psychiatrists. They were giving me lithium carbonate for bipolar. At the end of a week, they took me before a board of 5 or 8 psychiatrists and a couple nurses because they want to see, do we need to up this guy for another 10 days, mandatory commitment, or could they release him? And my brother, if I've signed the mandatory commitment, and I would have too.
Yeah.
It looked like I could hurt myself. I mean, I wouldn't have believed my own story. Believe me, I wouldn't have believed. Now I would, but then, so I couldn't expect cops and ambulance and psychiatrists to believe, but while I was in the hospital, my psychiatrist, who was a pretty fundamentalist Baptist, had a hard time. He kept asking me, and well, you want to hear the truth? Here's what happened. I talked about the mind of God and seeing reincarnation. That blew his little Baptist Christian mind. He couldn't deal with it. I immediately started talking about his sons. He didn't even tell me he had sons. I told him all about them. I started every morning, I'd write down on an envelope the time he would come in, because I'd look at a clock and I'd say, "What time's he coming in?" Beep, it jumped to 2:25. Okay, thank you. Write it down, put it in an envelope. 2:25, he comes in with this envelope. "Is this a letter?" I said, "No, open it up, read it." Well, I'll read it later. "No, just look, it's just one word, okay. 2:25, what does that mean? Look at your watch." Interesting coincidence. Day 2, it was less interesting. Day 3, it was starting to bother him. Day 4, he refused to open the envelopes. I could predict to the minute when he'd come in every day. Blew his mind. And I kept saying, "Doc, have you ever had a psychic experience? Have you ever done a psychedelic drug? Have you ever wanted to know what infinite mind is even about?" Questions that completely boggled his mind. And he said, "Well, of course I hadn't had psychedelics. Of course I hadn't had a psychic experience." Well, doc, I know the difference. Big difference. No drug, because they thought it was past drug use and flashbacks and LSD. And, I did my share in the 60s. But no, I know the difference. It ain't that. You can't do this on a drug.
Right.
One question that continually went through my mind: why me?
That was going to be my question. That was going to be my
Why did
question.
I have this? And there's absolutely no doubt. I don't care who believes me what I went through. You can't unplug something that's been, you can't undo what's happened. I got to see Infinite Mind. Why me? I kept asking. 8 months later, these monitors who I had felt before the car wreck, I only saw one time right before the concrete, and they were as physical as can be. Right before that, when they were saying, "Do you trust us?" I felt like if I had a step ladder, I could walk up and touch their damn table, because their crystal table, because it was a certain physical height above me. I guessed about 5.5 feet. I need an 8-foot ladder. I could touch the dang thing. Now, who would think that? But I did, because they were so physically there, and I looked around and nobody even saw them, and something in my head said, wow, I can go touch this thing. I didn't even see it. Anyway, 8 months later, I felt them. I'd been asking this question, and out of the clear blue, I felt them. I couldn't see them, but it's kind of like I could see. I was sitting out on my porch, and I could see what kind of part of the front yard they might be coming from, kind of this way. And I looked that way, and they shot this beam into my head, this instantaneous vision and sound. And it looked like sound credits at the end of a movie, spanning off in the distance, like Superman getting thinner or something. At the same time, in that one warm voice, they said something akin to, and it was the same thing I was reading, but it only lasted a second. But again, time stopped as I saw this and as they repeated it to me. And it was something to the effect of, why'd you have this? Well, you always were curious. You always wanted to know. You asked questions. You pursued the truth. And guess what? We figured you could handle the truth. You're ready to, and we took you there and took you back. And yes, because I had questions about this, they said, yes, we used the car incident as a way to completely get you out of your body. And the fact that it was a big car crash, you ain't gonna just walk home. You're going to be grounded by these grounding agents that you have to be, because you can't go float off again. You got one trip that should last you a lifetime, and did, and has, believe me. Don't need another one. Joyous, I wouldn't mind it, but I don't think there's anything else I could see, because the rest of it's in me putting it to use, living, and so forth. So 8 months later, like I said, they answered me in this movie script and said, you wanted this, we gave it to you, you could handle it. You're hyperactive, you're super sensitive, you got to watch your diet, you got to watch your emotions, you got to watch, and it's true, and then they were gone. I never saw them again, never felt them again. I feel them a little bit. I kind of ask them sometimes, can you guys, you were so good. You were
Yeah.
so, you were like chauffeurs or protectors or guardians to give me comfort before I went totally crazy, and let me hang on to a little slim hope that, wow, this is going to lead to something. There's some light at the end of this tunnel, just a flicker. Thank you. But they kind of respond from a distance, as if saying, we're off. That was our job. You got other guys now that help you with that. We go, this is what we got down. We're taking the next passenger. And I thought that was beautiful. I could feel that sometimes, more than they told me. I could feel it. So they're sending me light transmissions back about, sorry, don't have time to visit, booked up.
Yeah.
And over this happened in 1977. It absolutely blew my mind. It blew all my friends' minds, that the whole thing. How the hell did you not get killed? Hey, I didn't get a scratch. I didn't get hurt. Ambulance, cops, police on the scene were all mind blown. Well, I was mind blown, but not by the accident. I was mind blown by where I went and how I was protected. The accident was easy. I was protected. Ta-da! I believe in miracles. I absolutely, from that moment forward, I absolutely believed in miracles. Now I can't, there's not a button on my head to make a miracle. If I could, I would eliminate Putin overnight. Trust me.
Yeah.
Number one, but I tell people from my experience a couple things. Number one, everybody is part of infinite mind. Every molecule, every thought, every quirk. There's not one thing in existence, manifested or not, that's not manifested and part of infinite mind, period. There's only one thing, infinite mind, and it disperses itself into everything, including us, individual souls. I suggest, because I got my trip voyage information in a millisecond of Earth time, a second or two. There's no limit to how much we can grow in that area. There's no limit to how much we can learn. It ain't how old you are. I got a free pass back to the top floor and back in a second. Maybe it can happen to someone at 82, 85, or 10. Who knows? All kinds of possibilities. But if you ask, and you have to ask, if you ask your higher mind and your guides to help you and to help you grow and evolve, and you practice and do your part, because you can't ask for their help and then go out and shoot people. It ain't gonna work, you know. But if you have the right intentions and the right attitude, and you ask your guides and you do your part in practice, you'll probably get what you're working on.
Yep.
And a lot more. So that's kind of my story and my
Thank you.
feeling
Yeah.
about it. I feel
Thank
so
you.
lucky. Thank you, monitors. Thank you, guides.
Yeah, I loved what you said about the infinite mind. I'm finding the same thing. I've now learned to talk to spirit guides and ask them to help. I'll do the work. I'll show up, but you just help me, because from what I understand, they won't interfere because we have free will. But if you ask them for
Absolutely.
support, they can help in whatever way that kind of helps push you in the right direction. I'm finding it happening more and more, and I've been feeling them with me more and more physically. I mean, physically feeling, in fact, right before we got uh, on this Zoom, I was standing in my office, and all of a sudden I was talking to a friend. I said, I think it's spirit guides that are with me right now, because I'm feeling heavy, 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 like not heavy energy. It's actually light, tingly energy. I said, I know they're trying to tell me something about what I'm saying to you, which is, I was talking about how I said, I'm just having trouble. There's so many things I want to do, and I'm having so much trouble balancing and managing all of the things and all of the people that I want to stay in contact with, and all of the things I want to do. And there are only these limited amount of hours in the day. And I was saying, I think something has to give. And all of a sudden I just felt this spirit presence. And so, and I said, I know they're trying to tell me something, but I'm distracted right now, where they're saying something about that. Like, yes, something has to go, and something has to, is demanding more focus. But back to what you said, how can we maximize, I'm just going to call it the power, for lack of a better term.
Oh, there are techniques.
Yes, to
Absolutely.
maximize this power that we all have to,
Well, first of all, I think
yeah.
that one of the most important things is to accept these two facts. You cannot change the past, period. You really can't change other people. You can influence them, you can beg, you can plead. And if you move those two mounds of clutter off your peripheral view, what you can't change, and there's 8 billion other things you can't change, then what's left is what you can change.
Mhm.
And that's where power is. It's always in what you can change. I never had a good voice as a musician. I taught myself piano at 33. I started playing guitar at 15, but you couldn't do a 4-hour gig as a solo guitarist in Austin. You get 5 minutes on a songwriter, and I wanted to do 4 hours as a soloist to see if I could do it, you know. And so I learned piano to do it, and started in 1980 at 33 years old, learning scales. 33. Most people learn at 6. I knew music, I knew chords, I just didn't know how to finger a piano. So I learned 3 years later, I talked my way into piano bars. I ain't a great piano player, still ain't a good singer, but I learned how to. The one gift I got is personality and gab. I grew up with 6 brothers. I know how to talk. I have no idea what's going to come out of my head next if I really turn on the spontaneous be crazy button, and I got them. And so, hell, I'll make that my living. I
Yeah.
was, and I learned to be a solo artist for the next 35 years of my life. I never worried about the bands who didn't hire me because I don't sing. Because guess what? The buck stops here. I get to book myself. Don't have to see if 4 other people can work that night. It's always about what you can do, what you can change, what you can bring to the table. Um, and you were saying something a moment ago I wanted to comment on
Yeah,
about.
please. Whatever comes to
Was it
mind.
about, is it about reading the signs, picking up something?
Yeah, I think it was
Guys.
yes, actually that's a great thing to have you answer too, which is often I will feel I am a medium, so I understand what that is, but at the same time there are times where I know there's spirit with me. I'm going, okay, but why are you just saying hi? Is there something you want to tell me? And sometimes I'll go meditate.
Mhm.
But just for actually for my sake, but also for the listeners, when you even if you don't get that tingly feeling that I get because I've developed it over time,
Mhm.
I've spent every day in meditation intending to connect with spirit. But even if you're not there yet, where you actually feel physical
Mhm.
spirit presence, how do you know what they're trying to tell you?
If you and I talk, we both understand English, unless one of us is trying to con the other, we can pretty well clearly communicate.
Yeah.
And we also agree that 2 + 2 = 4 in this physical world. Such exactness it's a different world. So they don't have a throat, a voice like you and I do, that they don't use the phone. But if you ask your guides over and over and over to help you find a new car, your neighbor might drop over and say, "Hey, my wife wants to sell her car." I know I just came over to talk to you. Is that a coincidence? No.
Yeah.
It's your intention connecting the infinite mind and dropping a little quarter in their neighbor's thing. And, hey, I'll go ask old Gary. He might need a car. There's no such things as coincidence. There's no such things as accidents. Everything is cause and effect. So the more you learn about your own spirituality and the more you ask your guides to help you, because it is symbolism. There's many times when I was going through my near-death experience in that week, I was seeing it full blast, but it still was not a definite yes or a no. In fact, one time I remember I wrote about the book. I was asking, what do you do with all this? What's the answer? And I saw a guy riding a bicycle and he took his hands off all of a sudden. He's balancing. Well, there's my answer right there, right in front of my eyes, right this second, the very second I'm asking that question. That symbolism is always there. The art is knowing how to interpret it,
Hmm.
and you interpret it through your own experience and your own mind. But you can get better at it. Number one, skill, practice, trust. And you have to remember your guides and your higher minds are not going to force you into anything. They're just going to present you with more suggestions rather than less. You know, confirmation is always a kind of art. And sometimes, your intuition may tell you, you're up at an intersection. It may say go right, and you go right, and you fall off a cliff and get back up and wipe yourself. And what the hell was that about? You step back out and you look up and there's a sign that says, well, if you go right, you might step into some crap. Never read the sign, never thought about it. So maybe you learned a lot of, next time I'll see if there's a warning sign here or something.
Yeah.
It's not in vain to make a mistake go the wrong way. It's another part of learning. So my point is every point of human existence can show us something, can teach us, can elevate us. I went through it, learning it, seeing it at a very manic level. Thank God that was enough for me. I don't need that extreme
Yeah.
level. I was so psychic then I could tell everything, but the price of human sanity for that, I didn't
That's
want.
why we don't see
That's
everything
right. That's why we don't.
because we go nuts.
Ah, I couldn't walk down the street without hearing every stranger's. I could predict who was calling the phone. I could do, and this went on and on and on and on. I'm driving everybody nuts and me nuts
Yeah.
until I finally, like I said, broke down and my guides helped me. And at that moment, I realized that our guides are really there.
Yeah.
They know our intentions. These monitors knew everything about me. They've been watching me. They had my whole case history file, and they didn't need to explain it to me because I looked up and they said, "Do you trust us?" And I knew immediately they know everything. I don't, but they do. So hell yeah, I trust you. You're making more sense than anything I've been doing this last week.
Yeah.
Learning to interpret your symbolism is an art. It takes practice. It takes trust. But I'll give you a couple examples. About 10 years ago, I misplaced my keys. I use this example a lot because it's true. And I was frantically going through all the drawers in the office. And finally, I took a deep breath and went, you know what? This is frantic. I'm not finding my keys. I'm getting angry by the second. So I'm going to change this whole routine right now. Guides, get together with my synapses, if you will. Kind of lead me to my keys. They're somewhere. I ain't going to go look for them. Now, you may or may not help me at this, but if I don't ask, I'll never know if it'll work or not. So I vowed that, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee, ain't gonna look for my keys. Halfway through pouring the coffee, I looked over and there's my keys. By the microwave. Instantly I went, wow, and I picked them up. And Shannon, as clear as I'm talking to you, I felt my guides kind of chuckle and say, well, Gary, the keys can't walk, of course, you know that. But your system works. Try it. And I'm 74. I kind of have a hard problem walking and moving, and I don't like looking through all my piles and clutter for something. So I just think about it. I just think about it, and I find it sooner rather than later. Why shouldn't it work that way? Why should life not work on a whole new magical level? Everything in the world, everything in the universe is trying to hint to us to get to a higher level of efficiency, operational mode, love, compassion. And we're seeing all the things that, because we ain't there yet, that are breaking down, all the systems and so forth. So ask your guides to help you. Ask them to help you know how to interpret symbolism. I see it all the time now, you know. Now I miss something, I kind of look, and if I can't see it, I'll ask a sign to see, and then the sign, whether I've had this with screwdrivers and canes and piece of paper and everything, just they point over this way, I go, oh, there it is. Thank you, crumbled up piece of paper. I'm serious. Why should the point is, when you grow spiritually and psychically, there's no limit, none, to how much you can grow and evolve. There's a limit to how many cans of peanut butter you can eat, or or whatever, how many years we live, you name it. But there's no limit. And having been so fortunate to see infinite mind in a split second or two of Earth time, I know for a fact that you can learn a lot more, a lot quicker than you even imagine. I was very lucky at having that. Most people don't get that experience. I was lucky, but you don't need that experience to make your life work better. You just need to think outside the box. You need to ask your guides to help you. If people really want power, and real power is inside. It's the way you think, it's the way you love, it's the way you feel. It's not outside. You get the inner machinery working up, tuned, correct, humming, working, then not only is the inside working, you feel better, but the chaos in the outside you can deal with a lot more effective because you got the light on. I ask your listeners, never doubt how much power you have inside, how much you can learn about. If you don't know it today, if you didn't know it yesterday, that's fine. A lot of people probably couldn't play the cello yesterday. Doesn't mean they can't pick it up tomorrow. It just means that up to this moment they don't know. So I encourage people to think big, practice, ask your guide to help you. Use your free will for growth and to learn. And when everybody goes through fear, everybody goes through doubt, we just do, it's human, but we don't have to stay there. Hell, we all go through fear of sex when we go through puberty. We don't have to stay there. We all bump into the curb when we drive. We don't keep doing it. So if people are aware of correcting themselves and an introspection and growing. And if they meditate and turn off the damn TV inside for 5 minutes a day, which you have to do, if you meditate, your mind will start thinking. You have to consciously bring it right back to right here, right now, breathing, or a blue light, or a mantra, something real simple so your mind ain't thinking. Right before I had my near-death experience, about 15 minutes before that car wreck, I was pacing down the street, the back roads, scared to death, asking questions, wondering why I'm going through this. And finally, I kind of like this, almost like a bolt of lightning hit me. And it's like every synapse in my brain had connected to every synapse in my brain, and there was no logical way to explain what I was going through or why. And I felt this sort of naked emptiness, but kind of a sense of relief. Well, I ain't going to find the answer in my logical mind. It ain't there. And that was sort of I felt like, okay, now I got to float above this. The only thing I can depend on is spirit. At the same time, that I felt the ineffectiveness of my logical mind to explain what I'm going through and why. I felt this sense of liberation, and I felt this sense of like maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I got some wings. I can kind of fly to a higher level and not deal with what the mind's trying to figure out. And sure enough, within 15 minutes, I was on the voyage to infinite mind and back. I ask your people to think big, think outside the box. Don't live in fear and doubt. If you got it yesterday, fine. It ain't yesterday. You don't have to bring them skeletons into today's closet. And you certainly don't have to play the broken record of yesterday, whether it's I'm lost, confused, I don't have a chance, or whatever. Take that off. Because once you start taking it off, and you may have to take it off 10 times, but it's kind of like your closet. If the skeletons end up in your closet, guess who brought them? And if we keep bringing them, and if we start tossing them out, then there's room in the closet for good stuff.
Yeah.
It's a practical way of thinking about life. We all got fear and doubt, but why let that run the damn show?
You can't. I just got a tattoo that says trust on it. It's, you don't know if you can see it, but for that reason, because it took me long enough to get to that point where I've learned to be in that's what everything you just described to me is being in flow, being in flow and
Absolutely.
matching the universe's energy. And I do the thing with the keys too now. When I was younger, I would scream, I would throw things, and now I just say, spirit guides, help me find the keys, please. And I just don't stress out. I just know I'm going to find it, or I know, you know what? I'm pulling up to yoga late. This happened the other night. There's just going to be a parking spot right out front. There's just going to be.
Absolutely.
And there is. It's the expectation is I'm expecting a good outcome. That's it. I'm just going to expect a good outcome and trust. And also in mediumship, I got this tattoo to remind myself, because the whole way that you succeed in psychic work, medium work, it's intuition. You have to trust not even just yourself. You have to trust spirit to carry it for you. And all you have to do is surrender. But for some reason, that feels difficult to do a lot of the time. We feel like I have to do something. And so I constantly remind myself, just trust the flow, and just go with the flow, and it's all good. But that took 40 some years to get to that place.
Oh,
And
we all have,
yeah,
we come with varying degrees of intelligence and liberation and support and help, obviously. But bottom line, there ain't no accidents. We came here to learn, and some people have very difficult challenges to learn through, and some people have much easier ones, but there ain't no accidents. It's lined up that way because that's your challenge. Maybe you come here as a tortured person in some lifetime, and maybe next lifetime you come back, and with your knowledge and experience, you know how to help these people. Definitely. Nothing's in vain. Nothing has to be in vain. And not only that, on the other side of it not being in vain, everything can be absolutely glorious and empowering. And the more we look at it that way, the more we see it that way. Now, life is going to throw us another curveball, no matter how pretty we look at things. But guess what? You go through enough curveballs, you start learning how to deal with them. you start bringing a bigger
Yeah.
bat. You just,
Yeah.
that's simple. If you didn't go through a curveball, you'd never learn how to deal with the
That's right.
constant curveballs life throws at us. So there is no randomness. There's no accidents. There's just things that we either bring to ourselves or bring other people bring to us. That may be great and may be unpleasant, but if we can't change it, don't drive yourself crazy. Change the way you look at it. I'm sure
Yes.
people in solitary confinement have to come to that point, because I mean, what a terrible, terrible situation to be in solitary confinement. I think those people either go crazy or they have to grow spiritually and mentally, make partners with a bug, write shit on the wall, you do something. And you look at someone like Nelson Mandela, 25 years in prison for supporting his people. He comes out, he's the leader of the country. I hope that happens to Navalny in Russia. That's what I think. He's in solitary confinement. I think he's perfecting his consciousness. He'll get a break. I do believe he deserves it. I do believe Putin ain't gonna last forever. I wish
From
he'd
your
go.
lips to God's ears, as they say. But I'm
Yeah,
kidding. Yeah.
what a sad shape. But there's been ruthless people throughout history. I asked the lady who taught me lithomancy.
Which I want to talk about, but go. Yeah.
Yeah, she taught me. I asked her many, many years ago about why Hitler was here, why these Jews got suffered. And she said the Jews came as volunteers to be slaughtered so the whole world would see what one nut could do, and Hitler came as one nut to pull that off, so the whole world would have a reference of how evil people can be. Lithomancy, she's the lady who taught me lithomancy.
Right.
In 1980, I met her, and she did the reading for me, this method, and I'd never seen it, and I was mind blown. I'd learned a little bit of tarot, a little bit of palmistry, but I basically felt better about either just using simple playing cards
Yeah.
or nothing, just looking, just feeling. I didn't want to remember all the stuff about tarot cards, but with lithomancy, I knew astrology. It's based on 10 stones that represent planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. And that's 10, and it's got 6 stones that represent love, life, luck, commitment, timing, and place. And I used to do it in person. I let the people drop the stones, but of course now I'm just doing it at home. And what happens is when I charge them up in my hand, I have people say drop. And when they say drop, I drop them. And
they
then
fall where they may.
I start reading in the center here. And I read up to 12 o'clock, and then around like a clock for 12 weeks. And sometimes beyond if stones land outside. Right here, the luck stone is kind of half inside, half outside. The circle represents the environment. So just by a visual point, this is saying, hey, luck pointing to Jupiter here, and luck also pointing to the outside. So look at the way they touch. They lean what they mean. And I don't try to predict everything in terms of names and dates. And everybody's got their own sort of psychic niche, I suppose. And I tend to see what people are going through and why and what life's trying to teach them and show them. And I think the reason that comes up to me more than anything is that's what I've always asked.
Yeah.
I've always felt like if I know I'm on the right path, I can deal with the details as they come. I just want to make sure I'm headed north. I think I'm headed north. Am I headed north? You with me?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I started giving readings. This method she taught me in 1980. In the next week or two, I started giving readings and wrote a book about it. A lot
Got one
of it's
right there.
based on, a lot of it's based on her system, and a lot of it's based on what I've learned, because there ain't a whole lot of books on this.
No.
It's a very unknown art. And I like it because I've developed it for 40 years. The stones really talk to me, the patterns, how they touch. I like it because I don't have to remember anything other than what I already know.
Right.
I know the
Yes.
astrologer signs. I know when I see the commitment stone or the life stone or the luck stone, one of the personal stones, I know what they mean and can mean. And the same stone can mean several things. If you reference to here, it might mean this. And someone asks a question about this, you might reference over to here. So it's kind of, I jump around a lot. If someone asks a question about the father, I'd probably look at the sun or Saturn. And about relationships, probably Venus from a female love and Mars from, horny guys and passion, because that's kind of how we meet in the middle. But it's a very interesting method. I like it a lot because it's free form. When I do readings for people, I basically record the reading and email them a link to download it. And if people want to find out about it or me or do readings, the easiest way is to go to lithomancy.com, just like it's spelled, just put a .com. Litho means stone, and mancy means divination by. So the title means divination by stones, lithomancy.com. Or you can go Google Gary Wimmer or GaryWimmer.com, GaryWimmer.com. You can find my email. You can email me, GW@GaryWimmer.com. And you can find my phone number if you go to my website, but the best way is email me. And if you're interested in the reading, I can set up a time and place for you. But I feel very fortunate for having learned a system that's really unique. I used to work these psychic fairs, and they got 20 palm readers and 30 tarot readers and 7 astrologers and me.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the uniqueness. I like the fluidness. I like the fact that it's very intuitive and you can feel things. And the stones will never land in the same position again. There's only you take 12 cards, tarot cards. There's only so many positions they can end up in.
Right.
Mathematically.
Yeah.
No
Probability.
limit, no limit to the possibility of these.
That's so interesting. I too am learning tarot cards mainly. I mean, I pull them for myself. I mainly just enjoy it. I use them as a supplement sometimes if a reading isn't as powerful, just because when I do readings, they're the ones, and I've been fortunate in the last few weeks to have had readings where they were so powerful and so necessary that the spirit came in with a strong, powerful message and a strong, powerful presence. But sometimes people come out of curiosity, and I'm sitting here going, I'm not really getting a ton. And then they'll say, yeah, I don't really know a lot of people in the spirit world. I really only have a grandpa and grandma that I didn't even meet. And I'm like, that makes sense. Not that you can't receive messages, but that's kind of when I go, well, let's just do some tarot and see what kind of comes up thematically and what we can talk through. But I also find that it reminds me of when I was training in restaurants, wine knowledge. I cannot retain that information to save my life. Wines and that sort of thing. Tarot is a little bit easier for me to it's a lot easier to remember, but there's so many, and I find myself pulling cards every night and saying, what is this one again? So I love that it's all intuition. Because a friend of mine said, oh, I don't really believe in cards and stuff like that. And I thought, normally I'm not the type of person like the pendulum and all that, but my feeling, and I'd love to hear your take on it, is really it's just spirit showing up in a different way. It's spirit shows up for mediumship or psychic work. But it's basically them guiding you to pull the cards that you're pulling. It's them inspiring you to have that thought. It's just a tool. It's not that there's magic in the cards. It's not that there's magic in the stones, although
there's magic in the universe.
There's magic in
and that's what
thank you for
together.
That's what I was going to ask your take on that and why we use these tools.
Excuse me, got a little hoarse there.
Yeah.
Any system can work.
Yeah.
Now, if you're measuring distance, it's better to use a tape measure than a piece of string. So there's different ways to do things and different tools. And any system you feel comfortable with of interpreting signs can work. Everything in the universe is synchronicity connected together.
Yeah.
So we can go as we west, east, north, south, and we can learn something, grow and evolve, and there's no limit. So whether it's a system you know, system you invent, system you practice, I encourage people to think outside the box. Practice a system so you get better at it, but let that system tell you how to be better at it too, how to be more free flowing, how to get more information. And a lot of it's sometimes turning the thinking mind off and letting the spirit just kind of, I record readings because sometimes I'll say something and someone will say, "What'd you say on it?" I don't know. That's why I
Yeah.
record it. You can listen back. I think I can't remember. Just came
Yeah.
through.
Because it comes so fast sometimes.
It certainly can.
I definitely remember a lot, but there are times where you just suddenly you're just in a zone and you're just
Hmm.
that's what it's a channeling experience where you don't it's coming so fast and you're just saying it as it's coming and you're actually having to turn off your logical brain in order to receive the information
Hmm.
from this higher vibration. That's why that's the art, and that's why we practice. That's why we practice the art.
You said two things that are very important because I do readings for people, and because we're going through such an intense world
Yeah.
change, it's real important to seek peace and harmony and light. And one way to do that is meditation. There's a lot of ways. So I continually bring that up and mention to people something that you just said is when you meditate, remember your mind will ramble.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to consciously bring it back to right here, right now, breathing. And it sounds like rocket science, but it's a challenge. But once you practice a little bit, then you can do it easy. Just like if you practice typing or the piano, you develop skill at it. You don't spend 10 minutes arguing with your mind. You spend 5 seconds going off.
Yep.
It's a technique. Develop
It
skill.
is.
And the more skill you develop on the inside, introspection, not blaming yourself. If there's something wrong, need to be fixed, fix it, move on. And the more you can learn about your own spirituality, ask your high guides to help you. There's no limit. And you know what? You get better results in life. You feel better. Other people around you feel better. And you open the door to a whole new series of miracles that maybe you didn't even think about.
Yes.
I've used my psychic ability my whole life to find gigs. Not a good singer, had to work hard to find employment. To find 12 years ago, I'm 74. Spent my life traveling. Had my share of girlfriends and my share of lonely times. But 12 years ago, I just thought, man, I want a relationship. I want to find my soulmate. And I asked my guides to help me find my soulmate. And I said, look, I know you guys give me a lot of opportunities. Never took the Pepsi challenge, but I'm ready to now. And to show you my intentions, I'm committing for life. You bring me the soulmate, I'm committing for life. And even if you don't, my intentions are clear. I'm committing for life. So if there's a soulmate and you can bring her into my life, I'm committing for life before I even see if you do or will. Can't get a better deal than that from my point of view, intentions. And I kind of repeated that thought prayer over a couple of weeks, about 12 years ago. And within a couple of months, actually a couple of weeks, I met the lady of my life and we're still together. I asked for it very directly.
Awesome.
I was honest with myself and my guides. Hey, you gave me a lot of good chances. It never felt like the right pair of shoes. I never felt like I really wanted to or could be married to this person. I felt like I went through a lot of relationships. I grew up with a lot of brothers, helping women heal from jerks.
Yeah.
I'd repackage them, fix them up, give them confidence, and then they'd wander off and marry somewhere else. In fact, a lot of the girlfriends I used to went with, I was the last guy they went with before they got married. It's like I polished them all up. And I felt, okay, if that's my job, fine. But I wanted a soulmate, and I got a soulmate. It's just, as soon as I saw her about 12 years ago, she walked up and introduced herself to me. And, I'm 6'2". She was my height, beautiful figure, glowing eyes. She's a writer. She's into same things I am, psychic ability, writing, hardcore liberal like me. But I had to work 3 years to get her into my life. So I had to
Right.
kind of pay back for all the commitments I didn't make. We got you a deal, buddy, a perfect deal, but now you gotta pay the tab for slipping by so many times.
Right.
Hey,
That's so
no
wonderful and
problem.
inspiring. Yeah. And it also speaks to, I get so inspired by that just with the power of manifestation. I've gotten to the point where I have ups and I have downs, but now I know from experience anything that I'm manifesting will happen because every time by the end of the year, I look back and I'm like, everything that I thought of happened. Everything I
Mhm.
manifested happened. For better or for worse, even if I sort of manifested wrong, it actually ended up happening. But in the long run, even though I might have had peaks and valleys, it all conspired to come to eventually get me to what I was asking for. And so I love that and what you said that. And I feel just on that note, that's where I am too, where I'm like, look, I've had relationships and I don't want to just have a relationship at all. I'm so happy with myself. I've got so much going on. I don't even, I haven't even carved out time for one. But what I manifest is that I'm not willing to just date for the sake of it. I have no interest.
Oh, I can,
It's next level love or bust. And I've also acknowledged to spirit, it's probably not the time. I have my hands in so many different things and I know that there's more for me to do. I'm writing a book. I'm working on this podcast. I'm getting my mediumship business starting to flourish.
mhm.
And in addition to voiceover, but I know it's going to happen because I asked and I'm like, I know in divine timing, you'll bring me that next level of love. I'm no longer willing to say, well, this person's nice or cute or whatever. I don't care. It's that soulmate connection that I want, and I'm not settling for anything less. And so that's very inspiring to me.
Keep your standards high
Yep,
and keep them evolving. It makes other people have to brace up to your standards if you
it
deal with
does.
them. It's a
And that can be hard
win-win.
for people sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's not an ego trip to really love yourself or really empower yourself. It's an
no.
ego trip to not do that, you know,
Yes.
to not
I love that.
empower yourself, to not grow and evolve, to not love yourself. That's an ego trip. I don't deserve it. Bullshit. Excuse my French.
You could say it. In fact, I love that you said that because I always tend to end on the question of first, well, I always ask people to plug their stuff, which you've done. Thank you. So and I'll have the links of where to find your books and your
Mhm.
services if you'd like a reading or you want to read the books. But the other thing I like to ask people, and I'm still going to ask it to you anyway, even though I feel like you've answered it 50 times already, is it's a tongue-in-cheek question because it's a big question that I asked someone to say last before we part. What is it that you want people to know? What's the one most important thing that you want people to know?
You have more power than you realize, but the power's inside. And when you turn that power on and grow and evolve, I think I probably said this earlier, but it is the most important thing. You have no idea how much you can manifest good things, but your intentions matter. You ain't gonna fool the infinite mind or your guides with your intentions. You may fool the whole damn world, but and that's what blew my mind when I saw my guides, monitors. It's like immediately they knew everything about me.
Yeah.
Everything. I didn't have to explain anything. They knew it. They had explained to me. uh,
Yep.
don't shortchange yourself on how much you can grow and evolve. Don't shortchange yourself on the power of self mastery as best as possible. We all got pitfalls and curveballs and pimple and BOs and problems uh, but we're all from infinite mind. We really are. And if we practice that and think that, it makes our life better here now. It's a win-win. It can be applied on a practical level. It can certainly be applied on a spiritual and emotional level, but just the basic little things in life we experience, if we're hitting ourselves on the thumb with the hammer and we don't like it, move the thumb, move the hammer. Don't do the same thing the same way tomorrow. And if you're making quality Martin guitars and you want them all to look the same and sound the same, do the same thing tomorrow the same way. But I bet the person who's building those Martin guitars is not bored, even if he's doing the same routine. He puts that love into that. Otherwise, he wouldn't be working there doing that or whatever. Allow yourself to enjoy every moment of your life. Don't let fear and doubt screw with you. We'll go through it, but if you never went through fear, you could never even be on the road to learning fearlessness, period. If you never went through doubt, you'd never look for truth and never recognize it. Falling you like a tree and you duh.
Amen and hallelujah. And what I love about that question is that every time I ask it, there's no hesitation. People already know what they want to say. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up, for being here, for just being so open and vulnerable and so much fun to spend time with. Such a wonderful person you are. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful it's people like you that that's why I do this. It's connecting with people like you. And it's also the joy of sharing these interviews with the world, with whoever it resonates with, and really offering hope and inspiration. And that's because of you. So thank you for being you. And thank you for being here.
Because of you bringing it out to people. Because of you
Thank
presenting. Give yourself a gold star. Okay.
All right. I will speak with you soon. I think you are delightful.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Me too. A
Stay
pleasure.
empowered, stay confident.
You too. Thank you.
You too,
Talk
girl.
to you soon, Gary.
Have a good night.
You too.